Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. The last video that I made was a reading of poems by Claude McKay. So there is a total of 5 videos that I have made reading his poetry. I may add to it a little bit. I decided, even though I have his complete poems, which is a book I don't particularly recommend anybody get, I noticed that I could get a copy of the Dover Thrift edition of the selected poems of Claude McKay for $4 with free shipping. And I thought, well, to satisfy my curiosity about the book, I might as well pay the price and order it. It should be coming tomorrow. So I may have a little addendum of poetry by Claude McKay forthcoming. This, to my mind, is the perfect book of Claude McKay. The selection was done, I think, in the early 50s, and there really is little else that one requires of McKay's poetry. Almost everything in the complete poems I yesterday classified as dross. That is no denigration of a poet. We count poets according to their best poems. And if you get to write one poem of the caliber of Western Wind, as W.H. Auden said, well, then you have made it. You are a great poet. Well, by virtue of the poems in this book, Claude is a great poet. One thing that kind of struck me at revisiting his poems after all this time is how much I could see of my own early poetry in his verses. He was a great influence on me. I was very lucky to have found his poetry while I was quite young and to be influenced by it from this very book. When the Dover edition comes, I will probably read everything that's in there that is not in here, just to give you a feel for his constable ballads, or whatever they're called. I am not much of a fan of his other works, but there might be 1 or 2 sonnets that the editors considered worthwhile including, so I will share those. But I also, separate to that, have been making videos reading my own poems from my own books in sequence. Now, I will probably leave some gaps because not every book that I have written has gotten published. And now when I say gotten published, I mean has gone through the self-pub mill. Either the first mill of non-fit press, that was these 5 books, my first 5 books, or what came later, Lulu.com. So I showed my first 5 books to you, Embodiment and Release, Sonnets, The Soul's Refinement, The Requiem. And after this, I said I had thought I was done with poetry. I gave up writing poetry for 2 or 3 years, I guess. And then the events of September 11th, 2001 occurred, and I spat out this poem shortly thereafter and had this book ready to go on the bookseller shelves on March 11th, 2002, so at the 6-month anniversary. It became my best seller at poetry fests and readings here or there, as I might give them at the library or other venues. I've always attributed that to its great white space. But I think the topicality influenced that as well. That having happened, it was as though the floodgates opened and I just continued to write. continued to effuse, and have never looked back. Now, there have been hiatuses here and there, but mainly due to external circumstances rather than volition, rather than some kind of declaration, I am going to stop writing. I often said Michael Jordan was allowed to retire from basketball and then return to it. So that is what I did. Finally, he did retire and then went into baseball, and that was a different story. I don't know. I believe I am at the retirement phase once again with my latest book against fascism. So I believe I'm there again. I'm done writing poetry. I thought I was with the book of sonnets, second series, which I wrote just before this, about a year or so before. And then this popped out. But I really, truly believe I'm done writing poetry. And I don't foresee writing plays because I don't know how I would do it. Possibly I could move into some other field, much as Michael Jordan did when he tried his hand at professional baseball. So the first, I should add that the reason I'm giving all of these poetry readings is because with the rise of fascism in my country, the United States, I have just become somewhat discombobulated, somewhat unable to focus. If you saw my videos at the beginning of the year, I had all these great reading plans, and the first 2 months went splendiferously for me. And then to push this book out, which did not begin for sure as a book, it just began as sporadic poems, but gradually it took shape as a book. I effectively gave myself a 3-month break from reading during the compositional phase, and then the typing phase, and the uploading to lulu.com phase, and all of that. But I have not been able to regain the momentum with which I began the year. I have not been able to read much. I've read a little bit since, but my focus is clearly not with books. And this distresses me, don't get me wrong. I'm just showing you some books which have been on my TBR, my to be read list for a while, and I was hoping to get closer to them. Well, The Story of a Secret State is not on my TBR. I've read that one a couple of times. But I Will Bear Witness, A Diary of the Nazi Years 1933 to 1941, and A Diary of the Nazi Years 1942 to 1945 by Victor Klemperer. These have been here for a while, and I think they would be marvelous reading in light of our fascist circumstances in the United States. And then I've long wanted to read Total War, this 2-volume compendium, a history of the Second World War. It would be good to just kind of make myself a little more familiar with the period. However, I have a host of other things ahead of this in the queue, ahead of these in the queue. I was reading Francis Parkman, the history of France and England in North America. And I waver. I've read, I don't know, the first 4 or first 3 books, and I'm in the midst of the 4th. And just don't have the focus for it. The early books discussed the coming of the white men and a lot of their interactions with Native Americans. And after the adventures of LaSalle, all of a sudden, this story becomes merely that of the white men with only cursory nods to the Native Americans as they presented an obstacle or obstruction, that sort of thing. And I'm much less interested in the history of that. I would like to get back to it and finish what I started, but not with all this going on. I feel I need to focus on the events in my own country. I need to do what I can to resist. And if you caught the last video in which I gave a poetry reading from Against Holy War, I went afterwards off on a tangent about the creative process and said that I also feel that I have to be alert to the possibilities for some kind of work that I might be capable of writing in response to what is happening. I likened the activity of writing poetry to that of surfing. One must be alert and pay attention to the condition of the waters and catch that wave if the opportunity avails itself. That doesn't mean it's going to be a successful ride, etc., etc. So that is all why I am not reading. But for me, it's worse than that because it's not certain that I will return to reading at all. I hope I do, but I have never been a strong reader. But I just have to kind of see how things go. Now, there has been a lot of talk online about, well, President Donald Trump is seriously ill. Maybe he has congestive heart failure. I don't know. There were patches on his hand. Then there were patches that were being concealed by makeup. There were swollen ankles. There was the appearance of a catheter in his trousers, etc., etc. And then the last, he was going away from a press conference or something, and there was a big twerk like that, which he did. One commenter in a video that talked about it said, well, that is the devil just tugging on Trump's shoulder and letting him know that his time is coming. Well, a lot of people speculate that Trump's time is coming. There was a lot of that during his first term, so I prefer not to indulge that. I am wondering how much I need to keep focusing on the news. I am noticing now that every day something happens, and then 5 or 6 of my favorite YouTubers will make a video about that thing. Like I said, this twerk. And I don't know anymore that I need to have everybody's interpretation on what's happening. Early on, it was very useful, and still to some degree it is. But like either way, I don't foresee completing any of the reading that I had been doing. I had been reading some Chinese history or archaeology, and then, as I say, Francis Parkman. I just don't see delving into that, and I might have success popping into one or another of these other books, but I am trying to be loyal to the goals with which I began the year. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But so that is where things stand with me. Now, I brought out Jan Karski's story of A Secret State. I read this many years ago and then reread it around the time that I was writing the book of today's reading, Fascist Heart, the story of A Secret State. I read it in the original edition, which I have, and probably it would be my preferred edition, but this has added material, some biographical information with which the first book never did. And while I was writing my book, Fascist Heart, it's got to be here, because I just showed it, I think, didn't I? Oh, no, I didn't. I showed everything else but that. Here it is. My first Lulu book, my first book put up at lulu.com. So my last at Non-Fit Press and my first at lulu.com have some similarities. Each contains 50 poems, each poem about 8 lines, very short poems. And they utilize a stanza which I thought I invented for this, but I've seen it elsewhere since and had probably seen it before as well. That is to say, a line, a quatrain, the first and third lines of which are 4 beats, 4 iambic beats, and then the second and fourth lines of which are 2 beats. So that's an unusual stanza, but not entirely unheard of in the English language. Oh, I brought out the wrong book. Well, what the heck? Yeah, that's not it. Huh. Pardon me a second. Yeah, not embodiment and release. Sorry, now I'm really getting confused, and I don't know if I showed you the right book or not. I don't think I did, but these are the 2 books. So this is the subject of last video, Against Holy War, out in March of 2002. This was written in 2002, I believe. I enjoyed the stanza form so much I wanted to persist. Now there is a 3rd book that I wrote which also utilizes that stanza, done sometime later, and it was one of those books I couldn't stand. I filed it away and have not looked at it. Once I think I came across it whilst shuffling papers and remembered why I didn't like it, and so it went right back into its cubbyhole, and I haven't looked at it since. So that will be one of the books that is not dealt with in this series. So I utilized some words by Jan Karski in here. She appeared to be competent, sturdy, and rather unimaginative. Talking about the kind of people that support fascism. We have them in this country as well. Now, the United States is at a stage where we are building concentration camps. There have been deaths in these camps, but the explicit turn toward death camps has not happened. It is the hope of many of us to stop this process before it gets that far. There has already been talk of making them the sites of involuntary labor camps or sort of holding pens while prisoners are sent out as slave laborers for big business. So, as with my reading of this book, I just read the first 20 poems. My first 5 books, now my stuff is all mixed up, so I can't, my first, and I know you don't need to see it again, but I did in the other videos, I said, if you want these books, you have to find them at a used book vendor online. They still are out there, not too expensive, but there are not lots of copies of them. But now I don't know why I went back to that. Sorry. I just read the first 20 poems, and I'm going to read the first 20 poems from this. Those 5 books are the books, now I remember, that I am most familiar with. They are the first work I ever did. Before, as I said in one video, I sort of went on autopilot. Sadly, I think in later days I've come off a little bit. It is a necessary part of learning to interact with the muse. The poet finds himself in essentially a very passive state. So passive only death is like, let us say, in order to receive what the muse delivers. And so it takes some while to learn how to manage that relationship. But what I am getting at here is that I do not really know these poems, and all of the books hereafter, I do not know the books with any great familiarity. I hope to continue with this because it is a chance for me to revisit books and poems that have been blank in my mind, except for the ones that I most recently finished. So against fascism, I know fairly well at this point. I have not let it go. I continue to give readings from it. But even the poems and sonnets from a year or 2 years ago, I have no recollection of any of that. So let me just begin. This book, I say it gives the nod to the coming state of fascism. That was pretty clear on the horizon in the vaguest of terms. I never envisioned what we are undergoing now as it is. I could not have done, and I could not have foreseen the rapidity with which things have changed, with which authoritarianism has been implemented, and all of the norms of democracy very much subverted. Now, not everything is subverted. The Supreme Court itself is subverted. The Republican Party and therefore the Senate and Congress are subverted as functioning bodies. But aside from these higher echelons, there remain many members of the judicial branch and elsewhere that have not allowed themselves to concede or bend the knee to the fascist faction, to the would-be fascist overlords. They are doing their utmost to destroy all of the social safety net which we have, so as to increase their own might and authority. Again, utilizing the theory that might makes right, which of course does not really work. So this title, Fascist Heart, should be read more literally than as any smart bit of prescience. It is discussing the condition of the human heart which occasionally opts for fascism. So I don't know that any of these early poems are going to get there, but some of them are somewhat sexual in nature. In the news, we have all of this stuff about the Epstein files or Epstein files, and Donald Trump coddling up to a convicted pedophile who was the procurer for Jeffrey Epstein, his good friend of 15 years. And he has brought other, I guess, sex offenders into his administration. And I think there were some brothers even from Romania or something that he paved the way to return to this country and so forth. The sexual crimes of fascism are a feature. They are not an accidental collateral. The joke upon mankind is that God made man smart, but not quite smart enough, whereat come love and art. The joke replayed back to God is not wise enough, yet man will have himself made wise through art and love. It might be said that art and love, compassion for one another and caring for one another are the only thing that can save us. We cannot count on any saving hand from government. 'Tis better that I cease to yearn, although you have the fleshly things for which I burn and which I crave. 'Tis better, though not barely ripe, the moment's hour, because you are too well my type not to devour. Girl, with your petticoat full tempting, and with your eyes that will not be my gaze preempting, and with your sighs. Girl, with the pressings drop by drop that I will take, you underneath and me on top, my thirst to slake. That which you give and I receive, that which we make, with pleasure makes our bodies grieve, with pleasure ache. That which you understand before all talk of God makes you but love and not deplore to take the rod. Now I should say, as a booktuber or as a YouTuber, I try to be mindful of my language. So I don't know how I would report the title of that famous novel by Joseph Conrad about the shenanigans on the ship called the Narcissus. I don't know how I would report that title. I would probably abbreviate it as is standard. But in my poetry, I just let it all burst forth, and the next one will do that. I follow TikTokers, and there are many words. There is a host of words which video makers change so as to avoid the censors or whatever over there. So that instead of rape, they will say grape, and so forth. I don't do that. I don't operate that way, and I can't. I don't think YouTube is so stringent, but I know YouTube does have its monitors and they check for things. So I don't know. Once in a while, a video will get flagged as having, I don't know, sensitive content or something like that. But I cannot try to work the system in that way. So just to let you know, there is some language in this next one. Young virgin or else not, sweet lass with budding tits, or in your cunt or in your ass, my passion fits. Young talking, vaginal embrace and deep caress, you never bring a man disgrace, eternal yes. The moment you receive a man's hot passion's clasp, you know the meaning of romance, and with love grasp. Gasp for sensation, gasp for air, are made divine, because it is no devil's snare, your flesh now mine. Sorry, I have the sniffles. Blood on the ceiling, on the floor. Everywhere is blood. Blood on my conscience, endless gore. Yet we call it good. Blood ever gushing like a tap. We as prey, gutter and drown, caught in the trap. Yet to God pray. I remember during the first term of Donald Trump, there was all this talk. Oh, he's ill. He's far off into dementia, etc. He still continues to be able to function according to the demands that are placed on him right now. And so I do not really have any great hopes, say, that ill health will hamper him. During COVID, when he explicitly caused the death of multitudes, he himself had the best treatment, probably the best treatment available to man, and so survived the illness when many others in his situation succumbed. So I am sure that he is getting the best of care now, and that his miserable life will be prolonged for the duration up until such time as nature or the devil's clasp cannot be shrugged off anymore. So thinking of dementia because of the line in this poem. Death and dementia crashes down upon the head, turning a wise man to a clown and hope to dread. These are the days of slander and of rich deceit, treachery that no reprimand will ever meet. That is a sad thought, is it not? Days of collusion, of betrayal, and of defeat. Days when death comes in the mail, incessant sweet. Sweet as the bodies on the pyres, as death counts mount, burning our sins away with fires to no account. What is it? There have been 330,000 deaths already due to Elon Musk's chainsaw wreaking havoc upon government and international aid, with millions more predicted if we continue on this course. Bodies in billions and in bags upon the copse, with corpses strewn all dressed in rags, death's bitter crops. Strange fruits upon the trees now hang, delicious awe receives the view without a pang, nor conscience gnaw. I'm sure you catch the reference there. Come to me, brother, thou art able, that hast lain under my roof, now at my table been foully slain. On poisoned meat thou hast disgorged, yet know the taste, as love and friendship, brother forged, succumb to waste. Me thou hast murdered. As I die, your eyes avert, afraid to witness villainy, your soul's own dirt. Me thou hast slaughtered, me defiled, but the while I was not by deceit beguiled, although you smile. The MAGA cohort has made clear its intentions all along. And as I say, the germ of this was foreseen back during the second Bush presidency, that of George W. Bush. And I think it could be argued that the germ goes even further back to the very origins of this country. Unquiet will remain the dreams as haunt your night, because your truth elsewise beseems, nor masks your plight. Hunted and hounded, held by hell's perpetual stagnation, there is little else to set you well. What had been young and had been sweet, experience has ushered into grim defeat and decadence. What had been holy, had been pure, to God consigned, became confused, contrived, unclear, without all mind. And of course, this was, I said, written in 2002, probably at the same time that all those events at Mar-a-Lago and Jeffrey Epstein's island were occurring. Vestiges of what might have been fall fast away. The cracks of our despair between all cast away. Ages and ages hence, or long ages ago, that thus were made to bow the strong, but who could know? But who would know? God grant us peace. Let this turmoil within the heart be calmed, be stilled. Let us embroil in murderous art ourselves no longer, but so foil the foe and fiend that from lust's solvent, soilent spoil we will be weaned. Kind of a little bit weird there. That's how it goes. Full circle thus we come and go, the lass may preen, but just as surely must she know what lad's words mean, and be engaged by nullity as plies her bed, for though his words betoken, she remains instead. Comely and sprightly, innocent, in all ways pure. That purity comely and sprightly, innocent, in all ways pure. That purity but has been lent will not endure. Endears but for a fleeting span, is sacrificed, though anvil for the spade of man in pounding tryst. Or tryst, I'm not sure, I guess. Man makes him adamant, will not be dissuaded. In his intention, woman's twat, which makes him jaded. Man will not be repelled, but forceful achieves his goal, though it make him revered, resourceful, or sparse of soul. And one last. Woman resists, relents, receives, as is her wont. As her conception she achieves by back or front. And as she lets him gain her puss, he is made man, as though there were no cause to fuss against her ban. I mean, anatomically, I'm not sure about that conception being achieved by the back. And I should say that this was post-incel phase that it was written, although maybe I got confused still. So that is a reading from Fascist Heart. As I say, from here on, as I focus on any of my books, any of my subsequent books, they are books that I am not familiar with, and so you can expect more stumbling. That was 20 poems from Fascist Heart. If you would like to read the rest, you must go to lulu.com. I will put a link in the description box. This was the first book that I put up on the site, and so it did not come out quite how I wanted. I think everything's a little bit bigger in font than I intended. But be that as it may, it came out okay. So it's a very short book, only 50 poems and 50 short poems. I will leave off. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.